Well, I hope you're going to love this message, but maybe you'll just tolerate it. So as I mentioned, we just passed through Valentine's Day. And what actually began as a rather bizarre pagan fertility holiday marked by debauchery and perverse violence, you may want to Google that, not while I'm speaking, but that has since evolved into a manufactured shopping day supposedly devoted to love, one where millions of people face a stated or implicit peer pressure to make lavish expressions of affection and appreciation to their partners and spouses that they haven't made the other 365 or 64 days of the year. And what I love to do, since I have this I'm a people watcher, but I have a perverse sense of humor, I like going to the grocery store late on Valentine's Day evening, and I watch the frazzled panic of overcompensation. People going, I got to make a big splash here. And thanks to social media, Valentine's Day has also become an occasion to make people who are single for any number of reasons feel more self-conscious of that fact, as if they are less of a person, if not part of a couple. And if for whatever reason you happen to be a singular person today, I want to celebrate that fact that you are completely lovable as you are. And Valentine's Day, when I'm most cynical, also helps the candy industry bridge the gap from Christmas to Easter, right? And another thing that I do is the day after Valentine's Day, I go and get candy at half price, and I love myself because self-compassion is important. Now, Valentine's Day obviously leans into the romantic, relational context of the word love, right? But as is often the case, that tends to shrink love down because we use the word love all the time, don't we? We love our partners and spouses. We love our kids and our parents. We love the beach and the mountains. We love God and Taylor Swift, or to some that's redundant, right? We love our country. We love the world. We love cheeseburgers and cheesecake. We love a new pair of shoes and a new streaming series. Love is the stuff of endless songs and poems and screenplays. And it's easy to allow something so vital and so beautiful as love to become a limp and lifeless cliche. Because our language is limited, which makes it easy to misuse love, to overuse it, to forget how powerful a word like love is and just what that love actually requires from us. And I think we need to create a new holiday devoted to love, one that correctly defines what love is and what it's going to mean for our daily lives. And I'd like to think that we are a community that comes together ultimately to figure out what love looks like in its widest and most complex form, to decide how we tangibly are going to express whatever is at the core of that word. And we do that individually, we do that collectively. Because any spirituality that's not built on love is rather useless at best or toxic at worst. And we have all seen plenty of evidence in the world of loveless religion. Many of us who grew up with a religious tradition, we did so with that tradition as a filter for our understanding of love. Growing up a Christian, I grew up hearing that God is love, and after the but was some really scary stuff about that God of love. But I grew up with the Christian Bible, and one of the things that I enjoyed about that was that there are many different words translated into English into love in that series of writings, and they helped me understand the breadth of love, because the word eros was in there, which spoke to romantic, affectionate, sexual expression of love. There was a Greek word storge, which talked about the familial bond of love, and we know what that fierce familial bond is like. The word philia, which brings us our brotherly love, our sense of community, of friendship, our tribe of affinity. So philia is the kind of love that we often express here together. And then there was the word agape, which spoke to an expansive, relentless love attributed to God or Creator. It was an aspirational love for everything and for everyone. So for as many conflicts as I have had with my faith tradition and with the Bible of that tradition, I always liked having these various manifestations of love, of romantic intimacy, of family, of friendship and community, and of unconditional, globally aspiration love. And in our modern language, we've largely lost the nuance required to describe the forms that love takes, which is why I can use the same word for my adoration of my spouse as I do my appreciation of a quality pastry. I love both of those things. Not equally, some days, maybe even in the wrong proportion. Now, in my Christian tradition, which some of you may have shared, I also inherited the command to love. And I had to love God and to love my neighbor, which was easy for some of my neighbors, but not as easy for others. I have to love myself. I have to love the least of these, those who are not seen and included, and I have to love my enemies. Now, no one ever really adequately explained to me how to have these antithetical expressions of love simultaneously. I've always realized there is a conflict in our efforts to love in our lives. There is a love allotment issue because there are times and there are circumstances when incarnating these aspirations to love simultaneously are a virtual impossibility because we are finite resources. And often in our relationships and our experiences and living as passionate human beings here on the planet, something has to give. Love has to err on the side of someone, or at least it requires a choice that will place us in the middle of conflict. So you face love questions all the time. How do I love this group of people and still love this group of people when they seem to be so different? Or how do I love this person when what this person seems to value is not compatible with what I value? And so we're always trying to figure out, how do I love someone who it's easy to love, and how do I love someone who is difficult to love? And I know that I have inclinations to feel love for some more than others. I'm preferential with my love, aren't you? I'm discerning with my love. Few of us in this room are incapable of love. None of us are incapable of love. But we are all susceptible to a love that has caveats and conditions. It's hard enough to love the people we like. And then we have to love people we don't like. Well, that may be a taller order than I am willing to try to embrace today. But love is about, for me, seeing, honoring, and celebrating the humanity in front of you and seeking proximity to it. So dehumanization is the antithesis of love. So in love, my faith tradition, and love was a pretty big deal. Jesus was a love revolutionary. So, friends, with all the things that we can ascribe love to, all the people we ascribe love to, all the activities, how can we know what is truly love and what is something less? I think it comes down to the emotional price, because real, abiding love is costly, isn't it? Think about all those different kinds of love. Loving someone in an intimate relationship costs us in vulnerability, in compromises. It costs us in the challenges of persevering, in yielding to the needs of another, in forgiving and being forgiven, and working and fighting to stay. My wife and I, like I said, have been married for 26 years, and I think one of the reasons that we're still together, besides the fact that I pulled one over on her, and we're probably closer now than we've ever been, is that we've both been equally willing to invest in our relationship, to sacrifice, to move toward the other. And it's been beautiful, it's been amazing, but it's never been easy. If you've ever been close to anyone in any fashion, you understand that. So that kind of love is costly. Now, loving someone we love and lose costs us in grief. When we lose someone to death or a relational fracture, in a sense, that loss is impossible to fill. We feel a mourning that accompanies it, always hovering in the periphery. I was talking to a dear friend this weekend. She was sharing with me the grief that she was feeling over the loss of her husband of 38 years. Now, he's been gone for over a decade. And she was taken aback by a fresh wave of grief that she thought she had evolved beyond. And it startled her and it frustrated her. And as we processed the frustration of that surprise sadness, I found myself feeling the muscle memory of my own journey with grief. Because if you said goodbye to someone you love, whether 10 days or 10 months or 10 years ago, you aren't a stranger to the painful and unannounced intrusions, right? As those of us who've experienced loss here understand, our mourning is not linear or orderly. There isn't a rational or reliable path. And though we may reach clearings in that grief journey, we may come to understand or accept certain things, at least intellectually. We are always susceptible to déjà vu that says, I remember how painful this feels. We don't ever settle anything and move beyond grief, do we? We simply move ahead with a deficit that has left us forever changed, with an injury that won't completely heal, with a debt that we'll never be fully clear of. Everything valuable that we receive needs to be paid for, and eventually the bill comes due for all of us. And death demands a payment too in our grief. And when the separation happens between us and the people who mean the most to us, the instant they're gone, we suddenly realize how much that closeness is going to cost us. We learn we're going to pay in profound sadness and tears that come from nowhere. We're going to pay at holidays that are never going to be the same, and we're going to pay in loneliness that creeps up and sucker punches us sometimes. Grief is the tax on loving people. It's the price of being well loved. Now, you know that loving a child, or as a parent or caregiver, friends, you know that that costs you something, right? And not just at the bank. Loving a child is paid for in a billion worries that you never knew you could have. In late nights waiting for the door to open or waiting for the phone to ring. You pay for that love in sacrificing sleep and time and agenda in order to try and make their life better or easier. It costs you in being the butt of dad jokes or being viewed as old and uncool, even if that opinion is incorrect. It's been said that raising a child means having a part of your heart existing outside of your body, and that's a poetic way of saying parenting is beautifully heartbreaking and heartbreakingly beautiful. Now, loving people as an activist or ally or advocate, that costs us as well in the risks we take, in the relationships that we disrupt, in the turbulence we face in speaking boldly and with specificity. And we know how gripped our nation is with tribalism and how fractured we are. And we know that if we step out in any way to affirm the humanity of a marginalized, oppressed, or discriminated against group of people, we will endure the pushback of those that disagree with us. So there is a cost to our convictions that are born out of love. Love will place you in the tension between your convictions and your relationship sometimes. And you're going to have to choose. You may have to fight for the relationship or for the people and causes that are threatened by the other person in that relationship. I know many of you, I don't know all of you, but I bet every single person in this room has loved humanity or strangers or democracy or the planet or a vulnerable group of people to the point that this love causes separation between you and someone who had been a part of your life. Maybe you've separated in loud arguments. Maybe you've had social media unfriendings. Maybe you've had silence and ghosting or emotional distance. But we all have been relationally altered because we love outwardly. In fact, ironically, it is precisely these expressions of love as advocate, ally, and activist that will be labeled hateful by people who find that offensive. So our commitment to love all people means demanding that everyone gets a seat at the table, right? It's a very different love, but it is a full expression of that love. We demand that every person's inherent worth is recognized at that table, that no one is devalued or excluded based on a fixed and fundamental part of their identity, their skin color, their gender, their nation of origin, their sexual orientation, their religion. And this love means we declare every human being equally valuable, but it doesn't mean we treat all behavior or opinions equally, does it? Because if a perspective directly endangers a group of people based on the essential parts of who they love, people of love will push back. If someone's worldview permits them to treat another person as less deserving of civil rights, or it discards their basic humanity, people of deep love will not allow that. If someone's evaluation of another makes them more tolerant of that person's mistreatment or less outraged by hate crimes against them, to people of love, that is a problem. I've talked about the bigger table for a long time, and we've often talked about the difficulty of bringing people together, especially because not all people come to that table with equal constraints and barriers. So if I ask a gay teenager and a Baptist preacher to come together in genuine community, both would be welcomed in the spirit of love, but it's a far greater ask of the teenager, right? If the preacher insists on the inherent depravity of the young person, if he or she cannot see the teenager as fully equal in the eyes of God or the law, then this is a barrier to expansive love. So the teenager's place at the table is terribly altered by the preacher, not the other way around. So love always errs on the side of the person who is marginalized and oppressed and vulnerable. That's what it means to love fully in that context. Real love is offensive to someone. And we need to be willing to love offensively. Because history shows us that love is costly in life as well. Love gets people killed. We can see throughout our collective human story that people who demand a love that expands the table are seen as controversial and threatening by those who would resist that bigger invitation. And the love necessary to bring justice or fight discrimination or affirm human rights will bring a response of hatred and violence. And yes, of course, all of these expressions of love in relationships and families and friendships and advocacy and activism, they come with priceless rewards too, with blessings, with gifts, with goodness. We get so much out of connecting our humanity with someone else's, but we don't get that for free. So love is invaluable and costly and messy. It is a spending of yourself on someone or something you value enough to sustain the injuries. Real love, friends, is fierce and audacious and courageous and bold. Real love doesn't sit quietly while bigotry bullies the most vulnerable. Love won't be toned police into making nice with discrimination. Real love does not apologize for its passion for humanity. Real love will not wilt when it is labeled too political. Real love is dangerous to injustice. It confronts ugliness. It welcomes turbulence. Real love will drive us out of the safety of our privilege and into the discomfort of the trenches. Real love will be called intolerant and angry, and it will keep loving anyway. And ultimately, love is something that is costly, but that we have decided is worth paying for. When we lose parents and friends and partners and children and people who matter to us, the pain is profound and it's ever present, but we take solace in its severity because we know we have lived with an embarrassment of riches to begin with. We were known and cared for and treasured, and we lived close enough to someone to memorize the shape of their hands and the sound of their laughter and the smell of their head and the billion idiosyncrasies that only we were close enough to know. And that's worth whatever we have to spend in mourning. If you find yourself freshly grieving today, ask yourself this question: would I rather have this terrible pain or lose all memory and experience with the person I love? Because we can't escape the former without giving up the latter. The pain is proportional to the connection. I'll be paying back the tax on being my father's son for the rest of my life. And as unbearable as that sometimes can feel, I'm happy to pay it because I'll always come out ahead. I will never fully be in deficit. I'm always in the black because I knew what it was like to be loved. C.S. Lewis writes, to love at all is to be vulnerable. Love anything and your heart will be wrung and possibly broken. He says, but if you want to make sure of keeping it intact, you must give it to no one, not even an animal. Wrap it carefully around with hobbies and little luxuries. Avoid all entanglements. Lock it up safe in the casket or coffin of your selfishness. But in that casket, safe, dark, motionless, airless, it will change. It will not be broken. It will become unbreakable, impenetrable, irredeemable. To love is to be vulnerable. Neil Gaiman is a graphic novel writer, and in a book called The Sandman, there's this bit of dialogue that I think is pretty helpful. Have you ever been in love? Horrible, isn't it? It makes you vulnerable. It opens your chest and it opens your heart, and it means that someone can get inside you and mess it up. Friends, for the rest of our lives, we're going to be judging the weights, the cost of loving with the price. But let's remember, people are worth what it costs to love them. And we are worth the cost of being loved. Rest in that this week. Seek a larger love, a deeper love, a love that confounds hateful people, and a love that's worth everything it costs.